The following is a live broadcast of a Lone Star community radio program, recorded and broadcasted live on irlonestar.com, Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and facebook.com/irlonestar. For more information on this show, please visit our show page at irlonestar.com/shows. To sponsor or donate to this program, visit our donate page at irlonestar.com/donate, or email us at lscrstudios@gmail.com, or give us a call at 936-666-1084. Lone Star Community Radio production and broadcast is possible by folks like you. So sponsor and donate today.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe, and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
All right. 9:12 here on Lone Star Community Radio's Dick and Skippy in the mornings. It's November 4th. Hanging out in the studio, LSCR Studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. 9:12 again. We're broadcasting live on Facebook.com/Dick and Skippy. And, of course, worldwide at irlonestar.com. Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1. Hanging in the studio with my co-host, Sean. How you doing, man?
What the hell was that?
It's for America.
I felt I should be doing some jazzercise put on some leg warmers and a headband and do a montage of me getting into shape with this
Come on,
music.
man. You gotta get with it. You don't like Jackson Brown?
I love Jackson Brown. You just gotta warn me when you pull something like this, dude.
Well, I was thinking of this song or his other political songs, but they're more depressing.
Yeah, this one at least has a good beat to it.
So,
thanks for the laugh, my friend.
You're welcome. So today's show, we are going to be hanging out till 11 o'clock, so stay with us. And we want to say a special thanks to today's show sponsors. We have Clean Sweep Office Cleaning and C3 Creative Content Creations. All info on our sponsors can be found on the description part of our show, which we will be on YouTube and podcast later. But right now we're on Facebook.com, and then, of course, Lone Star Community Radio's broadcasts all over the place. Today's the day after, and we'll get into that. If you have any comments, questions, or anything, feel free to comment on our Facebook Live. 936-228-9368 is our call-in 24/7 line. And leave a message. Email us at dickandskippy@gmail.com. Cool. And today's special co-host is Jay Stittleburg in the studio. Jay, how you doing?
Great. How you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I got like when I was here this morning, I was like, is it Wednesday? I kept forgetting. And the only way I know it's Wednesday is people start putting trash out. That's like my tell.
Is your go-to?
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, good. I think we're continuing on today. But yeah. We made sloppy joes last night.
Did you now?
Yeah.
How are they?
My wife actually goes, "Hey, we're gonna make sloppy joes. We never made those." And I was like, "Is this supposed to be like a pun for the election?" She goes, "Oh yeah, that is kind of funny." But no, I just got something quick and easy, and
messy, but
I haven't had sloppy joes. I want to say in decades. So
yeah, it's not often that people grab the manwich can and
we
beef
did it. We made it we made our own. We didn't do anything from a can
like the Pilgrims did.
Yeah,
we
made the 1800 sloppy joes.
Gotcha.
Well, it is election day, guys. So I know everyone's kind of paying attention to
day
that.
After.
So or whatever. Well, some
it's
states,
election month right now.
Technically, in some states, it's still election time, right?
Yeah, this is going to make 2,000.
You want to turn that down for me?
Oh, it's not me. Oh, it is
somebody.
No,
it's somebody.
That was
that
me.
Jay? Oh man, breaking the rules.
Could have been me. This is going to make 2,000 look like
What's 2000? The year 2000?
Yeah, the election kerfluffle, the Bush-Gore, Florida, hanging Chad Supreme Court thing.
Yeah, I guess.
And, well, no, this is why there was, I feel, such a battle over the Supreme Court. Because without Ruth Bader Ginsburg, R.I.P., it would have been a 4-4 split. And at that point, it goes back to the lower court. If the Supreme Court does not decide to hear a case,
hold on.
or they're
Let's
4-4
back it
split.
up. Back it up for me, Sean.
Yes.
So why would this go to the Supreme Court?
It can, if there's legal recourse,
Like what? Like what's the issue here?
allegations of there was a polling place, and this is just off the top of my head, where Sharpies were given out instead of pens, and it's being demonstrated that Sharpies
Can't be used
Sharpie
on
ink
a piece
is
of
not
paper.
scanned, and these votes were valid, or that there were polling places that were opened an hour late, and people were waiting in line left because they had to get to work, or poll watchers who were certified poll watchers were not allowed entry. So they're, in and of themselves, not horrendous things, on a galactic scale like jaywalking, but it can rack up.
Yeah.
And so you have a legal recourse for that. I want to sue this polling place or this party, whatever, because
so this is gonna be just
and
typical
it goes,
Washington
It
stuff.
goes municipal district appeals, state Supreme Court, SCOTUS, I believe.
Maybe.
Well, I just think I'll just say this. I don't think that's going to be the issue that would take it to the courts, quite frankly. I think the types of issues that would take it to the courts is, for example, mail-in ballots. So when you do a mail-in ballot, and typically most states kind of do them the same way. You fill out your ballot, you put it in what they call the secrecy folder or
Yeah.
envelope, and then you have to put that envelope in the actual envelope and
Yeah.
then seal it and sign your name across, the tab or whatever. But some people, unfortunately, don't read the directions, and they may fill out their ballot, but they don't put it inside the secrecy envelope. So how is that handled? And if everyone in a state, because counties count votes, right? The state doesn't count votes, counties count votes. So if each county doesn't have the exact same process to handle, how do you handle it if I open a mail-in ballot that's not in the secrecy envelope?
Mm-hmm.
Do I contact that voter and ask a question, or do I just say,
That's how
I'm
2000
not?
happened. This
So-
wasn't pushed through all the way. How do we read this ballot?
So if they don't all do it consistently or the same way, then that's something that could be contested.
Okay.
That's what I think is what would more likely.
Well, there's
create-
any-
because right now the outstanding votes we see across the 9 states that haven't been decided right now are really mail-in ballots. They're absentee ballots. So I don't think the discrepancy is going to come from same day, election day voting. I think it's going to come from the
Which has
mail-in
always
votes.
been the concern, if I may, especially among the GOP. And it's odd that these battleground states that still haven't counted, when they stopped counting last night for the first time in universal history, they's like, you know what? We're done for the night. Let's lock up and go home. And there aren't any cameras in there. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, they say, hey, look, we just found a box with 100,000 votes for Joe Biden in it, and he only needed 80,000 to get this. So there's questions. This is, and mail-in ballots, also with these particular states, everyone else did mail-in ballots beforehand. And then, so it's almost like early voting. You have the results immediately, and then you look the day up. These ones are like, we're not going to count these yet. We're going to do election day voting and early voting. And if you were of a conspiracy mindset, you can go, well, now you know how many votes so-and-so needs, whether it be Biden, Trump, Jorgensen, or whomever. Oh, Donald needs 50,000 votes to get this state. Hey, here's 51,000 mail-in ballots right here. Again.
Well, what's weird to me about this,
I'm not saying that's the case, but that's when you file a suit, that
is
can be your claim.
Why haven't we as a nation or country gotten this down? Because when I was reading that certain places that will continue counting votes for 3 days after the election,
We did have it down. It got changed in this election cycle.
And I was
we
like-
need mail-in. We need drive-through. We need this
well,
and
no,
that,
I'm saying like
universal
the
mail-in.
idea of your vote, you're being counted 3 days after the official election. I'm like, well, why couldn't, like, to me, it's more of why even call this election day then? Why call it election week or something?
Well,
Because a lot of people think, oh, it's going to be done on the 3rd.
Well, a lot of people think that, but
Yeah.
it's never been that way. I mean, you can go back to the 70s and talk about elections that took several days for them to decipher the answer. And, it's not about a vote was cast after Election Day.
I meant more the process.
The vote was cast before. It's just it's really dependent on how the state decides when they're going to start counting mail-in ballots, right?
Yeah.
So Texas is different, right? Because we see the results that came in last night throughout the course of the night, because the way Texas handles absentee or mail-in ballots is they actually start counting them. They actually started counting them last Friday. So they start counting them before Election Day. That's why basically when the polls close, within usually 30 minutes, all the early voting gets plopped in there, right? Which is all the absentee ballots. It's all the early in-person mail-in. And that's why that happens. But every state sets their own process. For the federal government doesn't set the process for
No, I
voting.
get that. I was just to me,
And they just don't do it consistently,
Yeah,
right? So some states don't start counting mail-in ballots
Till the day of,
until the
right?
day
Yeah.
of. And if they have millions of ballots to count, plus you have states that will, including Texas, that allow your absentee ballot to arrive after Election Day.
Yeah.
Even Texas does that. I mean, your ballot can still arrive today as long as it's postmarked before.
But there are some states that remove the
and it'll
postmark requirement,
and it'll
too.
still be counted. So, so there's many states that do that. So that's why the process takes. And if we see elections where it doesn't come into play because the way the states voted, somebody got to 270 already and it's over. But they're still counting mail ballots for several days, even after an election like that. So it's not like it doesn't happen every single election. It's just when you have close elections,
Yeah.
and it comes down
Yeah,
to
this were Reagan
these are
Mondale.
the deciding factors. They have to count them, right? So
Yeah, I would
Well, I think-
prefer to blow
I
out
guess-
one way or the other in this one.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it's when
I think a lot
someone
of people would.
when someone tells me it's election day, like being a child of the telephone age, the screen touch, like I want to know the results today. But
Everybody wants instant gratification.
yeah, so I'm like,
Right.
well,
Dick
why?
doesn't even like waiting a week for The Mandalorian. He wants to binge it right then and there.
That's some. I hate.
right.
I hate that.
That's like
so
I've told
much.
I've told so many people in the last 12 hours, like take a breath.
Well, I told my wife was like,
Get
"Oh,
off
do you
the
want
ledge."
to?" Well, I was already disappointed yesterday. Alex Jones wasn't on the Joe Rogan deal, so after watching that for an hour, when I knew that wasn't going to happen, I turned it off, and I was like, "I don't care because we're never going to know until like a week or two from now." That's what I felt like. When I learned about the 3 day afterwards, I'm like, "Oh, here we go." So
I went to bed relatively early last night when I realized things were just all over the map. Woke up at about 3:30 this morning because I ate the wrong thing at night, and one of those
sloppy joes.
I wish make it worth it. No, it was a quesadilla that I had a little too late.
I was like a week old. I know. I've been. There.
Oh no, I can't eat it.
So good, right? Yeah.
Oh no, that's Mrs. Skippy. If I'm within a week of an expiration date, I pour it out. But I was up to about 4:30, and I'm kind of, when I was kind of doing the overnight catch up, and I think the president made a very ill-advised middle of the night speech.
I liked it. It stirred up a little bit.
Well, that's all it did was just stir up an already agitated situation. But it's kind of like, well, all the votes have quote been cast, so what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And then went back to sleep. Woke up again this morning, saw nothing really new is done.
One thing, though, I wanted to ask you guys, like the thing I get disappointed with the current way the technology and things work is everyone's paying attention to these companies like Google or media or whatever, and it's like this has resulted off somebody's opinion, not the true count. If that makes sense. So
Everything until 7 o'clock last night, local time.
Yeah.
Everything. Well, no, 5 o'clock because there would be East Coast polling locations closing at 7 o'clock their time. It was purely speculation and guess. There should just be media blackout for every pollster and pundit and everything. Well, could be this. I love quoting listener Brett on this. If a headline has the words could, should, might, whatever, it's not a headline. It's an opinion piece.
yeah.
And until that moment, and I think the big loser of this election is the polling industry. They got to be shown the door now. 2016 was not a fluke. They are worse than weather people.
Well, what I was trying to say is, when you're watching that map get colorized, and it's like, like for example, you look at Arizona, and there's still over 15% left to get votes, but people have already called it for Joe Biden.
Well, yeah, and even Fox News did that, and that raises an eyebrow. What's the rush to call a state so early, any state, and I don't care, because even CNN was walking it back. And that when Fox is a little more partisan left than CNN in this particular case, that really makes my eyebrows go up.
Well, don't you think that could be potentially an issue for folks? Like, they're trying to pay attention, and then they see these things, and that's what... Because you could say this election has some chance of sparking something, say a protest or whatever, but like you're looking and you think this is what it is at face value, but realistically a lot of these states still are counting like the mail-in votes and stuff, so it's like what gives these people the right to claim it, and then it's not even a true thing.
The rush to do it, same thing with Virginia. Virginia was called last night for Biden, but they would have the number saying that Trump was up like 25 points percentage. And so people are tripping out. It's all over Twitter. And it's because of algorithms that the trend would be that Biden would win Virginia because of write-in. But everyone's so eager to be the first to break it that it caused grief.
Like, is there even a state that's 100% voted in? Like, everything's got and counted?
I doubt it.
Like, I'm looking
Probably
at...
Rhode Island.
Oklahoma is at 99. And that's really the only one I can find that's
Montana, probably. It's got to be a per capita thing.
I mean, states with smaller populations.
Yeah. Rhode Island and Montana are probably the two that are closest, because Rhode Island, I could count them right here. Just give me about 14, 15, 16.
Well, because what I feel like with
Wyoming.
this kind of information and how it falls, it's like I feel like anyone can just make this up.
Well, I
think
think
it's like, do I really know the truth of what's going on?
So if you look at the major networks and you look at their election desks and who's in charge,
Yeah.
right, of their election process.
Sorry.
They do use algorithms. They use all these PhD type folks. But at the end of the day, what they look for before they'll call anything is typically that they have a 99.5 at least percent confidence that the it's not going to change.
Or mathematical probability is.
Well, that's really what it all is, right? I mean,
but I mean, if it's like.
But we just said that like the polls and stuff are wrong, and they use a mathematical way to determine that stuff, right?
You got to go to a certain.
But typically, what they'll do is they'll look at the early vote, because typically most states, as soon as their polls close, they release early voting results.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Typically, and those don't really. The networks have access to this, and the networks might even have access to this as soon as the polls close, unlike when they actually post it.
Maybe before they close.
I doubt it.
Come on, man.
So
Not if Donna Brazil's on the case.
So I think
just believe, man.
So I think what they really do is they take those early voting numbers, which are already counted votes, and then they look at what vote is remaining, and then how that's what they use the algorithm on, is the remaining vote, and is there enough, like what would somebody have to get of that vote to swing what the actual
And it goes beyond the
answer's
state,
gonna be.
because it can get down. Remember, there are 13,000 some odd precincts in America, so it gets down to that precinct. The algorithm, that's 99% Democrat households, so chances are that this precinct's going to, and that gets worked into it. It's not throwing darts on a dartboard, but mistakes can be made, and.
Well,
Again, with the media's rush to be the first to, let's call Arizona, let's call Virginia, something, or just wait an hour.
And I think we see that now, because there's 9 states that haven't been called, right? So
yeah, and there's the thing, California counted their votes within like 35 minutes, and yet you have Nevada saying, we're not going to have anything till Thursday morning at 9. It literally makes no sense.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, I think that's the disappointing thing from my perspective, is we haven't gotten a way where we understand, like, we get this a little bit better, if that makes sense.
Well, again, it's up to the states to define it, right? So.
Jay, can we talk about, like, what would it take? Because I'm all for
boots on the ground,
updating the electoral process, internet voting, something that, but this was not the time. Now we have 4 years minus 1 day to get it right for the next presidential cycle.
Sure.
At what level can you do it? You can't get 13,000 precincts to agree. You can't get 50 states to agree. What federal level can put the infrastructure in place to where I wouldn't mind an internet vote or mail-in vote or something if I was confident in the system, and that was my issue this time. There's just zero confidence in the system. Who's got the jurisdiction? A lot of this could just be our suppositions, because we may not know the laws and stuff. But
yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it's a good question, and it's a fair question. And what is the right answer? I don't know. I mean, I'm somebody who doesn't necessarily think the federal government should be dictating how the elections are handled
Yeah.
in states. I think states should be allowed to do that, but much like public education, right? I don't think the federal government should necessarily be dictating how public education is executed. I think they should have building blocks and a framework of what should be done with public education, but then that framework being filled in should be left to the states, right? So it sets a baseline, and I think they could necessarily do the same thing with voting, because I think that to register to vote, there should be a process that you can register to vote, same day register, and vote the same day. Like I think every state should do that. I think you should be able to register to vote and vote on the same day. There, like Texas, you have to register 30 days before and all this other stuff.
That's weird.
I would agree,
there's-
but there
there's
needs
so
to
many,
be.
But there's so many states that allow you to register same day and vote the same day.
That's
so,
the thing, no
So we need
state-
some consistency, right? So I think that you should do that because it creates access.
Well,
I think when it comes to just election day itself, I think that you can have voting precincts like we do, voting boxes in each precinct. But I still believe that even on election day, you should be able to go to any polling location and cast your vote in the county you live in. I don't think you should have to go to a specific
And I don't
place.
disagree. I'm
Right,
just
so-
my concern would be sure, register the same day you vote, but the vetting process has to be.
Well, of
improved.
course. I mean, I don't disagree, but obviously there's states that do it. So there's already a process in place that works. So why
And in
it's
some
not
levels,
creating a wheel?
because we've had mail-in voting here forever.
Sean wants the DNA taken. He wants everyone's thumbprint and all that kind of stuff in a database so we can prove.
Hey,
who you
I wear
are.
my BCG scar with pride
So-
because when the aliens come, that means that I've been checked out and I can go to
Yeah.
I mean,
Alpha
and,
Centauri.
and quite honestly, I always find it fascinating that we vote on Tuesday, and it's been that way obviously forever. But at the end of the day, I also think that Election Day should be a federal holiday. Quite frankly, I think we should make it easier for people to have to go vote. I know we have laws that say, your place of business has to give you, and I know
Easier said than
and I
done.
know every business is not necessarily closed on a holiday, but
Well, that's one thing that gets me, and we must be completely different from other places here, especially like in Montgomery County. I felt I had multiple opportunities to vote. Like there really wasn't like what Sean likes to say, voter suppression kind of tactics. And when people tell me like, oh, I didn't vote, I'm like, dude, you had like a month to vote. I feel like you could like, I don't really get that kind of complaint, but unless other cities and counties and do it completely different. But like here, Montgomery County, like I don't see how you can have an excuse not to vote. Is that make, because there's like places you could call to pick you up. I mean, there's organizations that can help you. Like
Sure.
Outside of you not leaving your home, like it's up to you to get out of your home and go in somewhere if you're not doing the absentee ballot.
sure.
So I don't really get that. And another thing that really bothers me about looking at the numbers is there's not that many people voting. Like I was astonished.
This time around, it's gone up, and I'm ecstatic about that. The record, how many states was it where they surpassed early voting, surpassed the total vote count from last time? Real quick.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, like what I'm saying is, I just searched this up. 29 million people live in Texas. Not all of them are eligible to vote, but looking at the voting,
Say half
so say half, only 10 million, about 10 million people voted.
out of 29 million. That's pretty good.
So
Well, and I mean, I've said long ago, and I still say it today, that we should strive for turnout in the 90%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what we should do. I mean, if you look at many European countries when they hold their elections,
Move to North Korea and have 100%
right?
voting.
Yeah, they have voting in the 90 percentiles. Places like Australia and whatever, and we should strive for that. Unfortunately, we're a big country, and a lot of people just don't participate. Quite frankly, they may, even though they may be registered, they probably are registered because they got their driver's license and got registered, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to participate in the process, right? So it's a challenge to get people to pay attention, because some people just don't. They don't. They live their life and they don't pay attention to politics. And
it's almost impossible today if you're in and have any sort of technology, because that stuff is just thrown at you today. Yeah. Like if you have Facebook, you open up Facebook, the first thing they tell you is go vote. It's like they make it almost brainless to like find out where to go do that, because it's like they have a whole stuff. I tried it out. I was like, oh, let's see what's going on here. and it's really easy. Like it took me like 3 minutes to know where I needed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good use of the technology.
But one thing I wanted to kind of shift. Let's talk about.
Can I do this real quick?
No,
it's a listener. It's a listener.
Well, we can get to them later. We're first. No, I'm just kidding. What's the listener say?
Brett pointed out. He said, blah, blah, blah. Oops, he wrote something else. Same day. He feels same day registration is an awful idea. Same day registration is basically begging power brokers to drive into the Home Depot parking lot and hire themselves a passel of, quote, voters. But then he follows up with an election day national holiday and any precinct voting, as was done in Harris County this year, seems the best common sense fix. And then there's a third one. There was a time when Texas precincts were famous for not only 100% voter turnout, but most of the livestock in the county also voted. But so, again, no easy fixes, but it's like of the three postulations that were just made, he agrees with two of the three,
Sure.
but says the third one. And I think that's what needs to be done. Blue ribbon committees need to be formed right now, today, for 2024 to say, how can we, should COVID-21 hit? Should, pig flu hit? Should EMP get knocked out the Eastern Seaboard? The post office, get them up to snuff. All these things, this needs to be worked on now so 2024 we don't have a repeat.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, the challenge again is getting agreement. But you see, we talked about three things, and we can.
Yeah, that's kind of my point.
67%.
You can say, well, that's
pretty good.
stupid, but that one's not so stupid. And we all go for beers afterwards.
And you can find the common ground of, okay, what can we agree on and what makes sense, and try to get those changes implemented to make the counting faster and make it more
I feel like if you
accessible.
did the same day registration voting thing, that the results you'd find would be so much drawn out because there is probably a process to secure that person, make sure they're part of whatever. It isn't just like, oh yeah, here you go, and we're done.
Sure.
I bet there's like a 48-hour plus week, like, oh, let's double check all these people because they registered the same
Sure.
day, and we're not trying to draw out the end result. We're trying to get it the same day.
Well, I don't think it's getting drawn out again. I think that I think people's expectation that
I need to
in a
know.
presidential,
I need to know at 7 p.m.
I think
dude.
people's expectation that on a especially in a presidential election on election day
and a hotly contested one.
that you're going to know all the answers by the end of the day when you go to bed. I think it's just unreasonable.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Well, that's the reality we live in. There it is.
Well, again, if it was a blow, Reagan won 49 states to 1 with Mondale. You knew that night.
But they were still counting votes for a week.
But exactly, that's the thing. Or think about, we had people like Teresa Wagaman or someone who ran unopposed, and were able, or Phil Grant, I think was the other one, had to wait until 7:01 last night to officially say, okay, now I can tell you, I won. No one ran against me, but I won.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you got to wait till
let's
the
talk about
votes are
local
counted.
stuff. I know the big election in Conroe was the mayor election because Mayor Powell passed away, and it looks
I'm
like
not laughing at that. I'm sorry.
that's kind of a horrible time to take a little joke.
I'm very
looking
happy
at-
that the living person won.
Well, yeah, looking at it. Now, one thing I didn't understand, and Jay and Sean can probably explain to me, when you have runoffs, is that usually when there's more than two people running?
Yeah, there's a difference between a runoff and a special election.
Okay, well, I meant more of like, so if Toby Powell's votes got into a certain percentage close to Jody's, would there be like a recount? Or is it kind of like, oh, if he won by one vote, he won by one vote?
He won by one vote.
Okay, I didn't know if there was some type of,
There'd be a recount to confirm that, but let's
Yeah.
say after the recount, is that one vote?
Yeah.
Then,
Well, it looks like Jody's going to be mayor. in
he
Conroe.
is. Yeah,
Okay,
he
so that's
won.
done. Okay.
yeah, 100% of precincts are voted. If you go to mctx.org
That's where I
/election,
am. And I don't want to,
in the top right, you see there's a grid where they're all green. Those are the
Yeah.
precincts that with 100% of precincts voting in. These are essentially the final numbers.
Yeah, so he.
and there's still maybe mail-in ballots that are counted.
Right, but
There's Jay. Okay.
But again, it's likely not to
those
change.
darn liberal mail-in ballots.
That's why when you look at those results right now, they're unofficial results.
yeah.
They're not official
So
results.
when,
They have to be
when,
certified.
when can we tell listeners when the official results are in for local and everything else? Like 2 weeks from now? Is that the safe bet? Like when can we
Probably.
2 weeks? All right, so we'll be back in 2 weeks, and
Now, I'm wondering about the legality of a concession speech. Let's say it looked like Powell was going to win and Chakowski,
Yeah.
or the other way around. Chakowski was looking ahead, and the estate of Mayor Powell gives a concession speech, and then, we found these mail-ins. It puts him over that one vote ahead. Did the concession legally knock you out of the race? I don't know. And maybe
That's probably why Hillary didn't give one.
or Stacey here,
Right?
Stacey Abrams.
That was really weird. I remember watching that. I was like, I feel like we're waiting for an encore.
It's kind of like
talking about a concert.
You can't fire me. I quit. Kind of. I'm going on extended vacation.
I was like, I wonder what's really going on. You think she's just like, it's not over yet. I'm gonna stay right here until 2 weeks from now. But
I'd probably pull the same thing.
One thing I will say about the Conroe election, Todd Yancey crushed it for place 1. He beat Dwayne Ham, who was currently, I think, in that position. So he got crushed. And I don't know who Todd Yancey is. So I feel like we need to get to know that guy because he clearly knew a lot more people in Conroe than the other 2 candidates. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but let me tell you right here. Looking at the unofficial results, he got 14,000 votes, and in second place, Brandon Polk got 3,000. So Dwayne got last with 2,000.
You can pretty much call that one because, again, mathematically, even if
I understand.
10,000 mail-in ballots came in all for the other guy, it still couldn't beat him. So you can
So
comfortably
he
call
crushed
that.
it. He crushed it. I have no idea who he is. And that's kind of scary.
Right,
to me.
especially over Dwayne Ham. Love him, hate him, you know his name.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go for name recognition,
Yeah.
especially in local races.
So something. I mean,
Well, I mean, obviously I don't live in the city of Conroe, so I don't
yeah, he
vote.
has.
I don't vote in these things, but Yancey, that's his Todd Yancey.
Todd Yancey. Yeah.
I mean, he had a billboard right on 45 just before you get to 105, right? So
That'll do it. One
well,
billboard.
I mean, I don't doubt it.
I'm not saying because billboards. People think sometimes billboards are funny, but we put one up for the veterans in the 2018 race. Right down the street on Fraser, and after the election was over, when you went and looked at that precinct that billboard was sitting in, it actually made a pretty big.
No, I
impact
believe it.
on
I
that
can tell you,
precinct.
I believe it.
I worked at a previous company where the owner had a billboard, and I can guarantee you that 90% of our clientele came from people saying, I saw your billboard. In fact, that's why I called to apply for that job. I called and said, hey, I saw your billboard.
Yeah.
And so don't underestimate the power of Gannett, but or Signade or whoever.
Well, yeah. Then it looks like Kurt Maddox is place 2, and then Kelly Inman. When it says unexpired term, because I know Jody left his position to run for mayor. Does that mean this Kelly lady is going to take over for the year or 2 year, whatever's left on the seat? Is that what's basically going to happen?
So say that again now.
So for place 5, that was Jody Jakowski's spot.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, I'm going to go do an audible and go over here and try to run for mayor. So whatever the timeline is left on that seat, that's what she's going to take over.
Right. And should Biden-Harris win, Kamala Harris is a sitting senator. They'll need to do the same thing to fill her spot. And that's what happened in Kentucky.
For who?
Who are
we talking about?
The Senate seat that flipped last night because there was a Democrat who got in because
So we're talking about Arizona, and we're talking about Martha McSally.
that's not the one I'm thinking of. There was one that flipped from red to blue. From blue to red. It was a Democrat
That was Doug Jones in Alabama.
Alabama. Thank you. That's what that was. There was
Did he die or something?
No.
Someone died?
The senator. Oh God, I knew the names last night.
Well, this is a great conversation.
No, what I'm saying is that there was a Republican senator who got called up to serve on the Trump administration somewhere. There was
Love
a
it when
special.
we draw blanks.
I know, right?
We're basically fake
So
news.
Jeff Sessions-
We're
Thank you.
making up fake news
No,
right
no, no,
now.
no.
So Jeff Sessions
Thank you, Jeff
moved to
Sessions.
be the Attorney General.
Oh, yeah.
His seat became vacant, and they had a special election to fill his seat. And that's when Doug Jones was running against, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was
An idiot.
he was the loony bin from Alabama that was running on the Republican side.
So
and,
Was
Democrat-
he the pedo guy?
and so that is how Doug Jones won
So
that
Democrat
seat
won
as
Alabama.
as a Democrat in Alabama. So in this cycle, now that seat was up, right?
Yeah.
So that seat's up for its normal election cycle. And so Sessions actually got into the race to try to win his seat back and lost in the primary to Turbeville, who's the former football
what a
coach,
name.
right?
I like it.
And so again, it was pretty much expected that Doug
Yeah,
Jones
there's
was
not a surprise.
not going to win re-election because it's Alabama.
The surprise would have been if Doug had. Thank you for the name. Again, last night I knew Sessions. I knew the whole thing.
And
but
we
I
see the
guess
same
haven't had
thing.
enough coffee.
We see the same thing in Arizona, where you have Martha McSally, who ran for the Senate in 2018 and lost to a Democrat in Arizona. And then John McCain passed away, and the governor appointed her to that position. And then it was up for election this year to fill it, and it looks like she's going to lose that race too. But she's kind of a wackadoodle, like, if I can use that term.
I think
like
we
it.
can.
I like
An alleged
wackadoodle.
wackadoodle.
I mean, I watched the debate between Mark Kelly and her. I mean, my dad lives in Arizona now, so I mean, I watched that debate, and I could only watch. You know me, I'm pretty tolerable. of
Yeah, you're
anything.
Mr. Debate.
and I could only watch it for about 10 minutes because everything that came out of her mouth, it was not policy, it was just degrading Mark Kelly, and I just was like, this is not a debate, and I couldn't even watch it. But
so, Mr. Kelly, you may have been
Were
to
there
space,
any
but have you ever been to the
surprises?
moon?
Were there any surprises? Because I don't really pay attention to the whole deal.
I think the surprise is that there's not the landslide that.
well, I think, I mean, to me,
I'm at smaller races, not.
Oh.
I don't know that there's been any huge surprises, to be honest with you. I mean, to me, some of the surprises, like in the Senate, the U.S. Senate, I was actually surprised Susan Collins has as big of a lead as she does in Maine. That was pretty surprising to me. They haven't declared her the winner yet, but she had a pretty substantial lead. But they haven't called Maine yet either. But I think all the other races. I wasn't surprised with Colorado. I wasn't surprised with Hickenlooper beating Gardner. I wasn't surprised so he beat the incumbent and flipped it blue. I wasn't surprised at that at all. But I look across the country and I look at a state like Arizona. A state like Arizona, if you look 6 years ago, Arizona was red. Both senators were red. They voted presidentially red. And you look at likely what's going to happen, at least based on what we see right now, the potential is that state's going to go for Biden. It's pretty likely that Kelly's going to win that Senate seat, and the other Senate seat's already filled by a Democrat. So that state's going to completely flip in its presidential voting and its 2 U.S. senators. I personally think a lot of it has to do with, how our president kind of treated John McCain while he was alive, and even after his death. I think that does contribute quite a bit.
I'll grant that, but I'll also say I believe a big part of that it's no mystery that these states that are suddenly going red are California exodus route states, as people are fleeing in droves. California, Oregon, and they're hitting these states, and it's just, and that's why. Plus, when you had the media saying, "Oh, Texas could be flipped, Cornyn's in danger, the blue," and all of a sudden, yesterday or late last night, for the first time I ever heard, "Oh, it was a blue mirage." And I have no idea what that means. I mean, I know what it means, and I know what they're trying to do, but it's like this. So many of these landslides or close races are manufactured. They're selling headlines.
Well, if you look at Texas, the needle continued to move in Texas, especially in the presidential election. If we look at 2016, Hillary lost by 9, right? Single digits, first time that had happened in quite some time, since the 70s, really. And if we look at this so far, the margin is 6. So the needle continues to move. And as far as the Senate race in Texas, it's all about the candidate that's running and the enthusiasm that those candidates bring to a race, right? I think down ballot, even a U.S. Senate race and a presidential election is a down ballot race, right? I think the down ballot race candidates that inspire enthusiasm actually do more for the top of the ticket on either side than the top of the ticket does for down ballot races.
Okay.
I think it's the enthusiasm candidates bring. If you look at Beto, Beto created a lot of enthusiasm in 2018 in that Senate race, and look at what the margin was, 2.5 points. Again, unheard of. You look at what the margin is in this.
I think he probably would have won if he didn't run for president and ran again.
Well, I honestly, I wish he would have run.
Yeah.
Not for president. I wish he would have run in Texas.
Yeah.
In 2020, I think it would have created a lot more enthusiasm. in Texas. Because if you look at at least the split I saw the last time I looked at it, it was 10 points between Hagar and Cornyn, right? So that wasn't even, it's not even as close as the presidential race, right? So you can clearly see that people voted Biden-Cornyn, in that because they weren't excited about the candidate. Where, so I think that plays a big role in the excitement of voters to go out and do things state by state, right? So, and I think people get motivated by that, and it energizes people, I think that was lacking a little bit in Texas.
Well, I think
this
that's what's
cycle.
important too going forward as a candidate is we talked about using social media and creating your own persona.
Uh-huh.
Like you're not part of a party. You have your name, and then party second kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's going forward. I think that's going to be extremely important, especially smaller elections, like size wise.
Mm-hmm.
Is that's how you're going to motivate people. And that's why made a comment about Todd Yancey. I was like, we usually have people call us and wanting to come on, and I never heard of this guy, and he crushed it. So clearly he connected to somebody in a city election, and I think that's what going forward. If you're running for something, that's what you kind of have to build that reputation going forward. It isn't like, oh, just because I'm a Republican, I'm going to win the Senate now. Now it's like, oh, I have to actually do my job and get my name out there. Like I think Dan Crenshaw is a good example because he got lucky with that Saturday Night Live thing. So people like across the nation know who he is. Yeah. Now he's the Popeye guy or whatever you want to call it. Not Popeye, the Cyclops guy. And but no, I mean like, but you know what I'm talking about? People know who he is now, and he does his own thing. He's always on social media.
But you also got to be aware of your audience because the nation may love Dan Crenshaw right now, but unless he's running for president, it only matters who in your district loves you. I'm talking about like Kim Klacik.
But you use that motivation when you do local stuff. You're like, oh, do you want to go see the Cyclops? Like, hell yeah, I want to go see the Cyclops.
And
like,
he did that. Go. He did that video where he's James Bond cyborg, and it sounds like a video I would have done if I'd been honest. Hey, let's do something kind of silly with Michael Bay music. But like Kim Klacik,
Michael Bay as a musician would be great.
She was that African American gal running in Baltimore and did that video.
She got probably crushed. Did she get crushed?
Well, she came in second, so she did lose. I'm not sure what the rate was, but she got millions of views, and I was with how she presented it was like good presentation. But outside of the district of the voters, if you don't inspire them, the other 49 states don't matter.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying using the social media platform, your message, you yourself gets well known, and then everyone kind of keeps tabs on you. Like kind of like AOC, everyone keeps tabs on her because she gets reported on all the time.
Yes.
And I think at the end it can only really help you because when people don't know names, but then your name is clearly recognizable.
Never underestimate the power of the camera.
Well,
quoted by Sheila Jackson Lee many times.
Well, yeah, and I wonder, for example, Stacey Abrams. I don't really know why she's as famous. Why do I know her? I don't even know if she ran for anything.
She did. She lost. She just.
I know, but she wasn't. Was she in office prior to that?
Yes, she was the Speaker of the House in Georgia.
Okay. Because I was like, I had no idea, and I'm like, why do we care so much about this lady? Like, it's really weird. Because I can get
squeaky wheel.
Well, I can get AOC because she's elected and she's making noise. I get that because it's kind of like what you want in your elected official: make some noise, do something. But with this lady, I was like, why are people talking about her being
still making
vice
noise.
president or something? I was like,
well, it's because she was in the leadership in the Georgia House. As a black woman, and she decided to run for governor in a state that is pretty red, and she almost won.
Yeah,
she came very close to winning, and then since then she's been very active in getting people registered to vote nationally.
So she's just she's not
herself,
elected anything. She's just kind of
right now. She's not. No,
well, I thought she lost like about 100,000 votes. It was like 63 to 163.
I don't remember what the final tally was, but it was a close race for Georgia.
She was crushed. Okay, Jay, get with the lingo. But no, it's something like going forward, looking at all these like people going out and doing this stuff. To me, that's really where I see the positive going forward: is get your message out, keep working at it. Kind of like you were saying, she's still doing stuff. So it's not like she disappeared. Like,
That's
to
right.
me, Beto disappeared. Like,
But he didn't.
Well, I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Like, he's
It
not.
didn't disappear from my phone. I keep getting texts from him.
He didn't, because he was very active in Texas in, again, registering, getting people registered to vote, and he's stayed very prominent.
I didn't see him on any talk shows or anything like that.
Especially since after, he dropped out of the presidential race, right? Like, I never wanted him to get in the presidential race. We talked about that already, but
Yeah.
I'm actually curious to see what he's thinking for 2022. To be honest with you, but
Well, that's what
Sorry, by the way, the numbers that I was quoting, that was Klasik's numbers. Yeah, Klasik got pasted.
I don't know who that is.
Kimberly Klasik. That was 63 to 163. I'm sorry, that was my bad. I was.
Yeah, I
I
told
thought
you
I was talking
fake
about.
news.
Hey, at least I admit it.
But,
Jay,
it's
do you mind?
it's a challenge. You're right. I mean, for me, it's all about trying to get my name out there and message with
Yeah.
people. And
Can we talk about your race now?
And,
Do you
yeah,
mind?
sure. And I want people to, ask me questions, right? I want, and I don't care what their political affiliation is, and that's, unfortunately, in today's political environment, this country is so divided, and it doesn't matter if you look at it on the local level or on the national level. It's just a true statement. And unfortunately, in these races that are partisan, you tend to get written off just because of the letter after your name.
Yeah.
And no one listens to what your side is because they just group you into what they think that particular political party stands for, one side or the other. And they don't listen to, they won't ask you a question because in their mind, they already know what they think your answer is going to be because of what letters after your name. In my experience, I have found that, when folks from, the opposite side of the aisle to me come up to me at an event and talk to me and ask me questions about the issues that affect them, more times than not, they actually walk away from me going, I'm voting for you. They don't walk away from me going, you're some crazy lunatic. Because, I look at the world, I don't look at the world through a political lens. I look at the world through a world lens, I guess is the best way to put it. And I don't look at my life through a lens where I only look at myself and the bubble I live in my house and the amount of money that's in my pocketbook. I don't look at that as the whole picture. And so, for me, it's about, I'm a rational person, and I understand things are, things are doable. Some things are doable, and some things are irrational. And
Well, let's look at it like you're looking at it as like, so in a party sense, 30 years ago, I see that no one really went against the party. But in today's world, I feel like there's a lot more flexibility for an individual who happened to be registered RD can really be outspoken and say, I don't agree with my people, with my
I
my
try
party.
to do that when I can.
And because for example, like I think that's what kind of Donald Trump represented in the Republican Party, but then in the Democratic Party, you have like AOC and Bernie Sanders kind of thing. Because Bernie's not really a Democrat.
He's not.
But you know what I'm saying?
It's
like,
not that he's not really a Democrat. He's not a
yeah.
Democrat.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it's one of those
Let's
things.
get that clear.
I don't even know this guy.
Well, no, I think it's one of those things where people who are being elected are being more, like you said, they're looking at it through a world lens instead of, oh, hey, what's the party going to do? And you can definitely tell people who are in our elected positions who definitely follow, what the party needs to do or whatever. And that's, to me, it's so funny because that's going to be dying out, I feel like, or it's going to be
I hope
kind of.
so.
And you can just tell by the way they go on TV and stuff. You're like, come on, man! Like like the way you talk to me doesn't even sound like you believe what you're saying.
Well, this is that's the unfortunate thing about politics today is you can tell. I mean, at least I can because I pay a lot of attention to politics. I mean, I can tell when I see interviews on TV by whoever it may be, on whichever side of the aisle it may be. I can always tell somebody who's just towing the party line, and typically they're doing that because they want to get reelected. They're more worried about getting reelected than they are anything else. And that's something that I've been committed to, and I've said publicly probably since I've started running for office, is that my objective is not to get, if I get elected, my objective is not to get reelected. My objective is to do what is right for the people I'm supposed to represent. And if
You
that
say that
and
now,
if that results in reelection, then so be it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Because I tell people I have a career in the oil and gas industry and a job I love, and so for me, I have a passion for politics and public service. And so if someday I get fortunate enough to win one of these races that I get in, so be it. And I have that particular time period, whatever it is, to try to make a positive impact. regardless if my party agrees with the type of stuff I do. I'm going to do what's right for the people I'm supposed to represent, which is everybody that lives in that district. It's not people that support me only or people that voted for me. It's everybody. And so, and if they like it, they'd reelect me. If they don't, they won't. I mean, to me, it's that simple. And I just don't think a lot of politicians, look at it that way. I mean, they're more worried about the power they have by being in an elected office or whatever the case may be. But that's just not what drives me to do it, right? And because people ask me all the time, why do you put yourself in this position? Why do you put yourself in a position where a Democrat hasn't run in 30 years, like the county judge race, or 20 years in this race? And I say it's pretty simple, because people deserve to have choices, and our current elected officials deserve to be held accountable, and that they can't just sit back and put their feet up on a table and just wait for 701 to roll around and go, okay, now I can claim I won. They have to do something. And, and that's really important to me. And not only that, I mean, I look at every election that I've been in so far, as far as from a personal standpoint, I look at it as a win. And the reason I do that is because it has empowered, just me making a decision. I mean, I was the first Democrat to make a decision to run in 2018. I was the first one to announce to put my name on the ballot in Montgomery County. And fortunately, and I might have been the only one. I didn't know at the time. And, fortunately, we ended up with a huge slate of candidates in 2018. And that was great. But it empowered so many people that live here to have choices, to be able to have somebody to root for.
Yeah.
To make their presence known, to not be afraid to tell people who
Jay,
who
how
they
many
are.
votes, do you mind me asking, did you garner this time? It was like tens upon tens of thousands.
So overall, the last numbers I saw, they weren't 100% of the precincts in,
ballpark it for
in the
me.
entire district, but it was about 127,000 votes.
Yeah.
So it's about 30%.
That is not insignificant.
So it makes an impact, right? And to me that is important. And I look at the fact that if we talk about my race specifically, if I look at Jefferson County, I mean, I was 3,000. I got over 47% of the vote in Jefferson County. I was 3,000 votes shy of winning Jefferson County, which is the second largest county that's in this district, as far as where it spans. I mean, it goes
Yeah,
across.
I'm looking at it right now.
Goes across Harris County, but it's a small percent of Harris County's vote. It's just a little sliver on the east side and a little bit on the north. So to me, that's a win, because that's 127,000 people that haven't had somebody to vote for in 20 years. So to me, that's what drives me to do these things, is that it gives people a voice, and it gives people something to cheer for. And I'll say the thing that frustrates me the most in running for these offices is, the second race in a row, and it's no surprise to me, but, you get invitations from these nonpartisan organizations, whatever they may be. They're clearly nonpartisan organizations, whether it's something like the League of Women Voters or an organization like NAMI or something of that nature that want to do a candidate forum. And your opponents don't show up.
And NAMI is the National
I think
Association of
what would be interesting,
Mental illness.
Mental Illness.
Jay, is especially like in your race, if you could, now that it's officially or it's over, you tally up, where do these people go? Because that's what's interesting to me is like your opponents, where did they show up? Because they had to show up somewhere. They
did. They held their own events.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like they were going somewhere, so it's either their own events
Sure.
or whatever. And that you're right about the presentation part of running for office. Like a lot of people, especially when they don't feel like they need to do it, they're not going to be motivated to go to these nonpartisan events. And I think I think it's a two-way street for those situations, because that nonpartisan event might not hold enough flack in the candidate's
Or if
perspective.
I may, there's an old adage where someone can think you're an idiot because you keep quiet, or you can guarantee your idiocy by opening your mouth. The more situations you put yourself in where you can put your foot in it.
And sometimes it doesn't even, unfortunately make a difference. And I'll be interested to see what the final results are in Georgia. But if you look at Ossoff and Purdue, they had a debate a few days back. And I will tell you right now, the incumbent Republican got destroyed in that debate. And I watched it.
Crushed.
That's a good time to use the word crushed.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, unfortunately, it's probably not going to make a difference in who wins.
Well,
right?
I mean, because it's all about where, as a candidate, where you can get people to vote for you.
Because to me right now, politics is not about candidates. It's about the letter after the name.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I
not
think-
about candidates.
And
at
especially here at Goal at the studio, what I would love to is get that reputation of we have people paying attention, so you need to come to this, because if you don't come, we're going to talk smack. Because a lot of people don't talk.
I would kill or die for us to be able to hold a candidate forum.
Well, I mean, and we just make fun of the person who
who
doesn't show up. I see no problem with that. And you know, if that candidate gets upset, then deal with it.
We'll have to check the Hatch Act. Got a listener question here.
we can't talk smack about people.
It depends. You got an equal opportunity smack talk.
That's right.
Misty asked, Jay, with your comment on Bernie, I'd be interested to know your definition of the Democratic Party. And now Brett kind of responded to her that Bernie's a registered independent.
Right.
And she may not know that, but I thought I threw that question your way. So
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good question. It's a fair question. I mean, obviously, Bernie Sanders is a registered independent. He is not part of the Democratic Party. He doesn't claim to be. He never has. I mean, he did what he had to do to run on the Democratic ticket for president, and that's what he kind of does every cycle.
Why isn't there a rule in the party that basically says something like, if you're registered not a Democrat, then you can't run on our ticket?
They did kind of change a little bit how they handled it this particular election cycle, because they actually made him, I think, sign a piece of paper about being a Democrat and stuff. I mean, not that it changes anything.
He sold
but-
his soul.
sure, I run for president. Yeah, I'm a Democrat. Sure.
Well, I think that's one of the most confusing things the past 10 years is that guy being involved, and no one really knows, and no one. I mean, that would confuse me as a voter. And the only reason I say that is because you tell me he's a Democrat, but then a lot of Democrats say he's not a Democrat, and then you have other people like, no, he's an independent, or and then it becomes a whole can of worms where it's like no one really knows this guy. He's basically a communist, socialist, dictator. I'm like,
don't forget Pinko.
Yeah, like I'm like, okay, well, I guess that sucks for him because.
Well, and I think and I've said this many times, and I'll answer her question specifically in a second. But to me, I've said this long ago, and I again, it still exists today. Is that the I'll call it the fringe ends of both parties are what really hurt our politics in the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, Bernie's positions on a lot of things kind of fit in with the fringe end of the far left, and so it's not unheard of for people to associate him with it, because number one, they see him in the Democratic presidential races, maybe not knowing that he's an independent elected senator from Vermont, not a Democrat. So that's where the association goes, and we also have to recognize that a majority of the general population in our country does not pay attention to politics like those of us that are involved in it so much. So they don't. They, what they may see on TV, and they associate it that way. They don't go do their own research. So that's kind of where that falls, in my opinion. But as far as to Misty's question about who is the Democratic Party and what do they stand for? I mean, to me, I look at it this way. I hate being lumped into a group and being defined by somebody else's thoughts on who I am and what I stand for without them come talking to me personally. I mean, for me, as a veteran that wore the uniform of this country for many years, and I love this country, so being a Democrat certainly doesn't make me any less patriotic than anybody else. But I think what the Democratic Party stands for, quite frankly, at least to me, what the Democratic Party stands for is we want, if I give it in just a broad sense, we want everyone to have a fair playing field, to have a chance to do whatever they want to do with their lives, and not have a hindrance that's put in their in their way, whether it be their race, their color, their religion, whatever it may be. And we have to understand that in the society that we live in, because I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. But I also understand that you cannot have a capitalistic society without some regulation. Because if we truly lived in a capitalistic society with no regulation, we would live in a terrible place. America would not be what it is today if we lived in a capitalistic society with no regulation.
I think there would be a sky city.
And
like the Cloud City of Bespin from The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, the only good people live there.
But
rich people.
I also understand that, when it comes to regulations, we have to be smart about the regulations we put in place, and we have to make sure that we define entities the right way, because there is clearly a difference between a small business owner between a small family-owned business and a large multinational corporation. There's clearly a distinction and a difference between those, and we need to make sure, especially when it comes to regulations and tax laws and all those types of things, that we have the best definition we can have of those, so that we have, in my opinion, fair taxation across the board, so that people do pay their fair share, of taxes. And we also we understand we have to live in a society that not everything goes everyone's way in life, and sometimes you have hardships in your life. And one thing that's great about America is that we have a system that's set up to help those people get through that time period. Now, are there people that abuse systems like that, whether it's welfare or food stamps or whatever? Of course there are. You're never going to have a society with 330 million people where you don't have somebody that's a bad apple that's trying to abuse the system. But in the broader flick, it's not rampant. I mean, I don't know a single person that, I've been on unemployment before, and I wanted desperately to get off it, but I would have never survived if I couldn't have gotten unemployment. I would have had to file bankruptcy. I'd have lost my house. I'd have been homeless. But there's a process here that helped me, and I worked, quite frankly, my ass off, if I can say that.
You can
to get out of that and not rely on that, and so that I could make my own money and build myself back up again. And so to me, that is what Democrats stand for. And do we get lumped into socialism? You're a socialist, or whatever they want to call me, and I go, well, I'm not a socialist by your definition of the word socialism, I guess. I said, but if I look at America as we live in it today, let's look at all the socialistic characteristics we have in America. It's called the police department. It's called the fire department. It's called parks. It's called bridges. It's called roads, and it's called interstate highways. It's called hospitals. There's so many things in our society. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. These are all things that back in the day, before those became law, the same kind of conversations were being had, and the same fear-mongering was being thrown out there about what it was going to do to our country. Well, I'm here to tell you, it's 2020, and the country is still here, and it's still just fine, and
But
we
for
have
how
all those
long?
processes in place. So to me, it's all about, I get sick of the fear-mongering and the labeling without somebody actually coming and talk to you. Because, I just don't understand how people can judge somebody when you don't physically ask them questions about the issues that impact you. Because again, I told you, when I have people that do that, and people that have been lifelong Republicans and have never voted for a Democrat in their life, and they come talk to me and they ask me my opinion on things, and they're like, I really like what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? And so just because, ask me my views, right? Democrats don't want to take all your guns away. I'm a gun owner. I'm a veteran. I have a license to carry in the state of Texas. I'm the last person that wants to take all your guns away. But do I think there's common sense gun violence prevention laws that we should adopt and put into place that a majority of the country agree with, including the majority of NRA members agree with? Yes, I think that if you purchase a firearm, you should have a thorough background check to make sure you can have one. When it comes to assault-type weapons, I think they should be controlled like automatic weapons are controlled in this country. That law has been in place since the 80s. And do we ever hear about a mass shooting that uses an automatic weapon? No, because there's a lengthy process to go through to get the federal firearms license you need to own an automatic weapon. They're not illegal. You can own them. But I think these are just common sense laws that absolutely make sense and would save lives. And when the majority of people agree with it, then I don't see an issue with that. We don't want to kill all your babies. That's not the objective of anyone, in my opinion. We're not pro-abortion. But what we do agree with is that women should be able to make a choice in their life, because abortion is not a black or white issue, as much as people want to argue with me on that. Every circumstance that deals with a woman who's pregnant and has to make a decision of what she's going to do, they are not all the same. They are not all black and white. How she became pregnant is not all black and white. Her life circumstances are not all black and white. And there are laws in place that say up to a certain time, and it's legal up to a certain time, and then there's certain circumstances beyond that it's allowed, and it's usually medical related. And if we look at the data for the last 40 years in this country, and we look at the CDC data that exists, the abortion rate actually decreases significantly during Democratic administrations in the White House. And why is that? Because the policies that the Democratic Party proposes our education, availability of condoms and birth control and educating on sex education and this what comes along with if you decide to have sex. And we see, all you got to do is look at the data. It's very clear. And so, I just don't understand sometimes these arguments. And oh, you're for late-term abortions. No, we're not for late-term abortions. And by the way, those are very small, typically less than 1% of the total number of abortions that occur. But let's think about that for a second. First of all, the woman that has to make that devastating choice at that point in time, that family that has to make that choice, those parents, that woman, she's probably they might have already picked a name. They've probably already put a nursery in their home. They were fully expecting to have that child, and something happened that put them in this terrible position to have to make a decision. Now, I just don't understand why people can't get that. I mean, because we know what's going to happen if abortion becomes illegal. It's not like they're going to stop. They certainly didn't stop in the 70s before Roe versus Wade. And more women died, and more babies died. And so if we really want to call ourselves pro-life, and we really want to, support people throughout their lives, you can't stop supporting at birth, which is what I see the argument being. You have to support that child, and I'll tell you this quick story. This is how I tell people my position as a Democrat, and it encompasses all these types of things. When a woman gets pregnant, if she decides to have that baby, I want that woman to be able to have the best prenatal health care that's available on the planet to make sure that she's healthy and that baby inside of her is healthy and not be hindered by her socioeconomic class or anything else. Once that baby's born, I again want her and that baby to have access to the best health care they can possibly have to make sure, again, the woman's healthy and that child is growing up healthy. Once that child gets to school age, I want that child to be able to go to a public school and get the best possible education that they can have a chance to do anything they want with their lives, regardless of their race, their color, their creed, their religion, or socioeconomic background, or anything else. And then once they get through that school, if they decide to go to college, or they decide to go to some vocational school, which I think we should promote more, going to vocational school. You can make great livings with vocational type work as opposed to going and getting a college degree. But I don't want that child to be burdened with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to go to college and get a degree. We have to rein in the price. I'm not saying they should get it necessarily for free, but I'm saying that it should be a fair price. The price of higher education in this country is outrageous and out of control, and I think the states really need to rein it in. And then once that child gets through school and they get a job, I want that person to be able to get the best job they can possibly get, have the ability to work themselves up the rank and get paid for the work they do equally, no matter if they're a male, a female, white, black, gay, straight, doesn't matter. That, to me, is exactly what Democrats stand for. A fair playing field where everybody has a chance and there's no roadblocks put in their way. That is my best definition of what I think a Democrat is, and certainly who I am.
Okay.
Well spoken.
I totally disagree with everything you just said. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's the thing.
And that's okay if
it's
people
No,
disagree.
no.
That's kind of the point. Jay speaks eloquently and in depth. And whether I agree, disagree, partially agree, think he's full of it, on board Team J all the way, doesn't matter. It's dialogue. It's discussion. Instead of just saying, it's going to sound weird. I'm sure Jay, throughout much of his adult life, has been called names galore that I haven't. I've had the privilege not to really have. In England, I was the Yank, but that was it.
I thought you were the Gaijin.
Gaijin. That's in Japan. I was Gaijin, but that was kind of generic because I was, non-Asian. In England, in my school, I was the only American. I was the Yank. Over this last couple of years, I've enjoyed being on the receiving end of some colorful names, accusations.
All true. All true.
Probably. That I agree with Jay that so many are yelling at each other and not talking with. And so, Jay could be Democrats rock and Republicans suck, and that's the end of that conversation. Or Jay can say Democrats rock because of A, B, and C, and then Sean gets a chance to say, well, Republicans rock because, we want this same thing but different route or something. And, as you were talking, comments are blowing up. You're saying things some people agreed with, some people not.
Sure.
But that's what the whole point is.
That's right. And I scan through them too. And I'm totally I'm totally
Leave it
fine.
to us.
Obviously, with people having their own opinions on topics, there's nothing wrong with again having a disagreement on a policy issue or something of that nature. But my point is that we don't have to agree on everything. That's what makes America the place it is.
We can't agree on everything.
That's what makes it.
You can't.
I mean, I don't agree with my husband on 100% of the things.
Well, I think that's
right?
the big that's the big disconnect I feel with
You're
politics.
sleeping on the sofa tonight, by the way. Now with that one.
Sure, I am.
I think that's the big disconnect though with
I'll be out of town.
politics is where like you and I we can talk shop, about it's almost like equivalent to like, fantasy football. But what that connection of our beliefs with the person we elected and then also what that elected person does when they come to do their job, I think there's a huge disconnect with that stuff. Because you don't really know what's going on. Like, I don't think I could fully comprehend what Kevin Brady does. But people are like, oh, he's on the Ways and Means. It's like the most important thing ever.
Well, not anymore.
Well,
but
you know what I mean. And
He's
I'm
still
like,
on the committee. He's just not the chair.
not
well, that's
sure.
what I'm saying. I'm like, well, what did he accomplish during that time? What did I don't really connect. It doesn't connect with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's the unfortunate thing with the politics is when someone does something at an elected level, we don't get told what they did that directly affects us. It might be like, oh, he
wouldn't it be
voted.
incumbent on you to ask and find out?
Well, yeah.
You'd want to know, hey, okay, you're my congressman. What do you do? Or look up Wikipedia, duties of a congressman. What is Ways and
Yeah.
Means? I think, I don't know if we have to take a break soon.
Well, that's what I was saying. The disconnect happens where it's like, where can we get this information? Because the only thing we can really see is like the way they voted. And that's where people can kind of develop their own opinions. It's like, they voted for or against.
But I feel
or-
so many people have been whipped into a frenzy on both sides that the other side is just evil. And my Facebook is blowing up. My ulcers are forming. Thanks, to all you Christians out there. Thanks for sucking. And I'm like, guys, it's take a breath.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what's so
whoever
funny
wins,
about
but we've been whipped into this frenzy.
But like the results for the presidential election, to me, that's what's so funny is either way you look at it, something's going to happen because
and the world will continue. I know that Jay does not want to destroy the world, so that's where. But that's the thing is, from my personal perspective, I've been accused, especially the last 36 hours, just that I want old people to die. I want gays to go back to Gayville. I want blacks to go back to Africa or just get killed. And it's like, no, I truly don't. And so those who have been whipped into this frenzy that the other side just must be destroyed, or as Brett likes to say, orange man bad. I mean, that just seems to be so many people on Facebook, and these are good friends of mine. That's all they can say is that they're literally saying, I can't sleep. I'm moving. I'm going to move to Germany where they know where fascism doesn't exist. And it's, I vote Republican. I didn't vote for Trump. I vote Republican. I vote some Democrats. I voted for Jay. I happily voted for Jay. I told my mom vote for Jay, and we talked about
I
it.
can't believe you convinced your mother to do that. Isn't that cheating?
No.
Okay.
I couldn't tell her in line. I had to whisper to her, don't forget JS. But because I know someone like Jay does not want to destroy the earth, or he's not a Bernie Sanders make us communist guy. That's where the conversations happen. That's where people listening in.
Well, my big
get it.
concern, and like with the Joe Biden, if he won, my biggest concern was the health issue.
That's my primary concern. Is that we're not voting for Biden. We're voting for Kamala Harris within 2 years.
I mean, and I know that's kind of a conspiracy theory, but what really
No, it's not.
what weirds me out about it though is like when you're running for election, there's so many moving parts, especially at that level. And I didn't fully understand the democratic process because I felt like anyone's better than Joe Biden in a sense of presentation and then that kind of stuff. And I was like, now you chose a guy who. I mean, I don't really know how to put it without, sounding like I'm making fun of him or something, but it would not surprise me if they knew something was wrong, but they figured the vote, like their little research says, hey, he's got a better chance of winning, so we got to put him up there. And then, a year or two later, like you said, he gets, asked to leave.
Well, I
or
actually
shut down
have
or whatever.
reverse engineered the timeline. Now, for something I need to hasten to thing when I said Brett, I like to quote Brett saying Orange Man bad. Brett doesn't say Trump is Orange Man bad. Brett quotes other people. He summarizes people anti-Trump as people saying Orange Man bad. So that came out sounding wrong. I want to make sure people realize that Brett does not say, quote, Orange Man bad.
Yeah, because again, the thing that stinks about it is you don't really know. I'd have no confidence in the two candidates, really. Like, there's just not a lot of confidence behind, what's going on. The only thing I could say that I will say about Trump in a positive light is he is a positive person. So he's always talking about being the best, having the country be the best, that kind of stuff. And I think that resonates with some people. And
well, the debate, I think it encapsulated the debate when Trump said we got to learn to live with COVID, and Biden's immediate response is, no, you got to learn to die with COVID. Now, right or wrong on either side, that showed a philosophy difference. That okay, this is the implication is for Team Trump, bad stuff happens, we got to overcome and adapt, and then on Team Biden, it was we got to hunker down, which is what we're told to do by a Republican county judge if a hurricane comes. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but that just showed a massive philosophy difference. And so I'm kind of backing up your thing about you have a businessman who's failed so many times, but still, overcomes. It's like every time I'm told, well,
somehow he still gets
he's
money.
declared bankruptcy 13 times. Yeah, but he still financed his own presidential campaign. So he did something right business-wise. So you have that on that end. As I said, I'm a big proponent of a Latin phrase, post hoc ergo propter hoc, which means it is because of what was, basically. And it's cause and effect. Where we are now is a direct result of what happened before and what happened before and what happened before. And that's where reverse engineering comes into it. And I actually, when I was up at 3:30 this morning and I was seeing all this frenzy of people saying, my ulcers are ulcerating right now. I'm like, either it's not and you're just being a crybaby, or it is. And that scares me that a presidential election can actually give you ulcers because,
I can
quote,
definitely
Orange
see
Man
it.
so bad. And so I started reverse engineering
Or vice versa.
several years saying, okay, here's where we are now. How do we get here because of this? Well, because of that, and so forth and so on. And in a brief history of like the last 8 years, 4, 5, 6 years, Hillary Clinton was to be coronated in 2008. And then Obama came from relatively out of nowhere. This fresh sophomore senator, right?
He was a freshman.
Freshman, 1 year in, and
Well, he wasn't 1 year in, but
first term senator.
So you're saying the Illuminati's involved?
Absolutely, and there were always backroom deals. The RNC, the DNC, of course, there are backroom deals going on, and looking down the line, and you can have your cigarette smoking men or whatever, but it was determined Obama would be a more viable candidate, could be because of possible, not even crimes, but questions of it. With the probable, and of course these are all my opinions, a probable assurance to Hillary Clinton that, okay, when these four are over, we'll back you up. And that's why she got Secretary of State hung in there. That's a consolation prize of all consolation prizes. Not Vice President, we'll give you Secretary of State. When 16 rolled around, President Obama did not stump for her to any effect, and she felt she was left out in the cold. Trump was not supposed to win. Even Trump felt he was not supposed to win. Was it Comey's book that said Trump had a meltdown on election night because he's like, oh my God, I actually won. I wasn't supposed to win. I believe that. That's the first thing Comey said that I actually believe, that you can't be a Russian plant and have a meltdown that you've actually won. I think he got into it just to stir some trouble. We have some local people who like to get into races and do the same thing. And, not mentioning names, but if you know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. And it's been demonstrated through the investigations that the whole Christopher Steele dossier was formed by the Clinton campaign to get scrutiny off the emails. Once that began, you had to run with it. And when you have an outsider who looks like he's suddenly going to win, saying, I'm going to get rid of, he didn't say draining the swamp is I'm going to get rid of Democrats. I'm getting rid of establishment. And so you have establishment Democrats and establishment Republicans going, and establishment intelligence services that, back in the day I loved getting together. It doesn't have to be a big conspiracy to say this guy could screw us all. We got to keep this going. And he wasn't at that point, he wasn't supposed to survive his first term. He was supposed to be indicted and impeached and booted out before this time rolled around. And when it didn't happen, and then with Kavanaugh, then it had to be, the Supreme Court. We have to make sure the Supreme Court stays at the minimum of 4-4 split. And with Kavanaugh coming in and then Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that's why the fight was so hard on the
I felt like the fight with
now here's the thing, because we're talking about Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade is way closer time-wise to the repeal of prohibition than it is from then to today. It's 50 years old. 72 is when Roe v. happened, so 72, 48 years old. And it was only less than 20 years after the repeal of prohibition, the 21st Amendment. It's not going, but it always, every time there's a Supreme Court just, Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade. It's not going anywhere. Roe v. Wade was decided by a 6-3 Republican-appointed Supreme Court, just like we have now, and it was passed 7-2 with one conservative and one liberal dissenting. So the conservatives have had a majority in the Supreme Court for a vast majority of this time since then. It's not going anywhere, but that became the hot button topic because abortion's got to be the one to talk about. And we had a guy here running for a judicial seat, local judicial seat, and his thing was Roe v. Wade. And I'm sitting here going, this is not your purvey. What the hey are you talking about? But realizing this is how you get people rowdied up.
Sure.
And so that's where we are today. And because this is going to go to the Supreme Court. And that's why both sides wanted Barrett in or Barrett not in. And you have the Speaker of the House saying she's illegitimate. You can't, or this has been cheating. No laws were broken in this. Proper, feel good, hypocrisy, absolutely issues. But to be told she's, the current Supreme Court justice is illegitimate or laws are broken, it's not the case. And that's where we are today. And I know it took a while to get here, but I was really thinking about this is a Occam's razor.
Let's change this up real quick because I'm tired of talking about this.
Okay. How about the Astros?
Well, no, Astros.
They are give Jay a chance to respond, too.
Respond to what?
My diatribe.
I have no idea what you just said.
But he does.
Do you?
Well, I'll just say this. To your comment.
I want to get a rant in. Yeah, both got rants in. I want to rant.
To your comment, there's some things that'll happen in this election, right? Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I will still go about my daily life.
Yeah.
I still love my job. I still love my family. I'll still be the happy-go-lucky person that I am. When it comes to the Supreme Court and everything that is being talked about in the Supreme Court, with precedent that's in the Supreme Court, people ask me how I feel about it and if I feel things are in jeopardy or whatever. I say, first of all, the legislature needs to do their job because everything that people rely on in the Supreme Court is something that the legislature should pass a law about and make it law. And then it's not a precedent in the Supreme Court. It's just, it's a written law. That's number one. So, when we talk about whether it's, Roe v. Wade or whether we talk about marriage equality or whatever conversation we want to have about the Supreme Court, and we also get into this, conversation about packing the Supreme Court. My point is, why are there 9 justices on the Supreme Court? Why was that decision made when it was made? And why do we have 9 justices? And has anything happened since then that would realistically determine that maybe the right number isn't 9? I think that's a conversation that should be had because there is a reason there's 9 justices on the Supreme Court. The reason at the time they made that decision, and things have changed since then. So if that was their reasoning behind it, then, it's a legitimate conversation to have about how many justices should be on the Supreme Court. I'm not saying it should or shouldn't happen, but I certainly will say the conversation should happen in a legitimate way. And so, I don't get myself all up in arms about the Supreme Court, quite frankly, because one thing I know about the Supreme Court, at least how I feel anyway, that the Chief Justice on the Supreme Court is somebody who's an institutionalist. He believes in the institution of the Supreme Court. He believes that they have to maintain their credibility as a Supreme Court. And as much as, unfortunately, politics plays a role in the judicial system in general, certainly because of the way we elect judges at a local level, the bottom line is that, you may swing one way or the other, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, but the law is the law. Now, you may interpret the law a little bit differently, and you have to defend the way you interpret the law to make a decision. But at the end of the day, I'm not convinced that everything's just going to go helter-skelter in the Supreme Court. I just don't see that happening. And, and there's certainly a reason that Donald Trump got elected in 2016. And I agree with you. I don't think he was looking to win. I don't think he wanted to win. I think he was in utter shock when he actually won. And I honestly think he probably said, "What the hell am I going to do now?" Because I really wasn't expecting to win. But at the end of the day, I understood. To me, it was clear how he could win, because this entire country was fed up with the fact that Washington, D.C. did not work, hasn't worked in years, and that people are fed up with it. And he was a wrench in the machine. He was an outsider and a wrench in the machine, and people wanted a wrench in the machine. And so they put a wrench in the machine. Now, some people, thought maybe some of his behavior would change over the course of time, actually being in the office. And I think, over the last 4 years, we've seen that behavior really hasn't changed. And a lot of people got turned off by that. And so it was very clear this year that a lot of those people that voted for him in 2016 did not vote for him this year. But there's clearly people that didn't vote for him in 2016 that did vote for him this year. So we'll see what happens in these 9 states as the next couple of days go by. I'm fine with waiting a few days to find out the answer.
Yeah, as am I.
No hair off my chest.
Let's grab a
frankly.
6-pack and popcorn and sit back and talk about it.
So at the end of the day, I just can't get myself worked up about these things, right? Because I know for me, I know what I do. I live my life. I am the same person whether I'm running for an office or not running for an office, and I know I'll run for an office again. And to me, it's about, I deal with things in my life that I can control, and certain things are outside of my control. And so I obviously have to deal with those. It's just like as a project manager, I have to deal with things.
And like Dick with the Mandalorian, sometimes you just got to wait a week.
Sometimes.
For the next.
Now,
So now you can go on your rant.
Yeah, what was Dick's rant?
What's your
I don't
rant?
have a rant.
Oh, yeah, what was your subject change?
Well, I was going to ask, locally, it was interesting interviewing some of the city council candidates, and one of the big things they all kind of said, especially on their material and websites and stuff, is they either or support or not support term limits in the Conroe City Council. And it was really interesting because I was like, I didn't really think that was an issue. But then, it's almost like every person who's running for a position in the City Conroe Council had to say yes or no to that. It was the number one question they all got asked because they put it on their website I support it, I don't support it. Now, when it comes to local elections here, why do you see, and it's kind of like what Jay was talking about, where people want to throw a wrench, they want change, they want to see something happen. Why is that all of a sudden important to talk about locally here, say in Conroe? Because it's kind of do we really have some, what do you call them,
there could
lifers here that are running for election?
And there could be some, if you're on the outside looking in, whichever party you're in, it could be, the only way I could, because once you're entrenched, it's hard to get booted out. You got to do something really horrendous for the most part. So for the outsider looking in, the only way in is for there to be term limits. And so once you're in, I would believe that some, like AOC before she ran, was all about term limits, but now that she's in, I bet she's the first one to say no term limits. My personal take is we have term limits, and they're called election days.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm being very simplistic with that.
I would agree with you on that if we had an educated population about politics.
And I would agree with you on that, too, that
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. You can vote. You're American.
No, I agree.
I'm not worried about how.
I agree. You can vote. My point is that when you say there is term limits, it's called, people going and voting.
Yeah.
But when people don't do research and they don't even understand what you're doing in office, they just recognize your name and vote for you, but they have no idea what your record is. That is where I see the problem.
And that's where I said it's simplistic because, I could respond with, well, it's incumbent upon the non-incumbent or the incumbent to educate. But
what I do.
Yeah, and you do. Many don't. Many, especially those who are in, like, I'm in. It's going to take an act of God or Congress to get me out. So here we go. I agree. I agree absolutely that education, political education, to me, the silver bullet is education. Everything stems from that, and that's another conversation you and I can definitely have.
I guess. Well, no,
Dick is always so excited about these
Well, no,
conversations.
like-
He wants tanks. Unless there's tanks in the streets, he doesn't care.
Well, I mean, the reason I brought that up is it's just so funny to me that in a local election, that was the one thing people really cared about. Like, the candidates felt that they needed to tell people about.
It definitely would not be the first thing that
No,
would be on my
that
mind.
is so
Well, that's what
far
I'm
down.
saying. Like, I was like, where
That to
does
me
this come from?
is like our R.V. Wade
That's like
justice of the peace.
Yeah.
That's
I
like
thought it was-
distractionary politics
Yeah.
right there.
I was kind of like, all right, I guess there's some.
All right, let's not ask him about the real issues. How do
Yeah.
you feel about term limits?
Yeah, it was so strange.
Let's not talk about the budget. Let's not talk about
Oh,
taxes.
he likes term limits.
Let's talk about term limits.
Yeah, Jay's absolutely right, Dick. Is
Well, that's
that,
what just kind of threw me. I was like, why is this important? Like, who's the one that brought this up?
over here. Term limits.
So, but especially here in the county, it's growing so fast, and I know the Woodlands is facing something that's going to be an interesting road to go on about incorporation and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then I know a lot of there really wasn't that many surprises in per se, like Sheriff Henderson won.
Rand Henderson.
Rand, yeah, he won. I don't think that was like an upset.
No.
Or a surprise.
Law enforcement tends to, when you have a sheriff or constable
Yeah.
or elected official in, for the most part, unless they really screw the pooch on something, there's no need to replace. Unless
Yeah.
they want to get Joe Arpaio level stuff where you make a national name, well, then you're a national target for
Yeah.
good or ill.
And a prime example of that is, obviously Rand and I would disagree on certainly some policy issues. But if anybody remembers during the county judge race, I gave him a lot of props in the county judge race, and I gave it to him specifically because he was the only department in the county that actually developed a strategic plan for his department and actually executed it.
And that was
Yeah.
the
Right?
mental health.
He was the only one that did. No,
task
it's
force.
not anything with it. This was
a general deal.
this was a general strategic
I'm sorry, I
plan
thought
for the
I-
sheriff's department.
Okay, I thought he did
Right.
something particular.
He did. He wrote through consultants. He hired consultants, but they wrote a strategic plan of how they were going to deal with streamlining how they spend their budget and where the money goes. And hiring new officers and getting new equipment, and he put it out there, and he's executing it, right. And I gave him a lot of props for that. I've told him that to his face during the county judge race. Because
you yell it at him?
No,
Oh.
because
crush it?
he was the only department in the county that did it, and he's still probably the only department in the county that did it.
There's some. It's interesting the way living here for almost a decade. It's like, oh, I'm just now feeling I'm getting like the surface of how the county works and the people involved and the decisions that are made. And because we had for example, we had the county treasurer on Monday, and she's like in the middle of a software integration, and she's just like, this is what's going on. Like, this is where I'm spending most of my time is updating this new software to do the treasury. And I was like, weren't you elected a long time ago? Like, you're still doing.
And that was one of the running points.
Yeah.
I remember that, the software upgrade.
But I mean, it's funny.
Darn Microsoft.
Well, that's what, when technology gets integrated with your job, that's where, some people really get it. Some people really don't get it. Like, especially when it comes to operating a computer. That's one thing I'm always, I really am. It's so funny to me. I wish I could live the lifestyle that these two presidents live, or the candidates do, because I feel like they don't really do anything themselves. Like, the only thing I truly believe is Donald Trump tweets himself. But like a Joe Biden, to me, I don't think he owns a computer. I bet he has a BlackBerry like from 20 years ago. I bet he like finally understood how to use that. Because when you listen to these elected officials talk to like Facebook and stuff like that, I'm like, man, if only like somebody knew a little bit about this, could really get them in trouble. Like these Facebook and it was like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, they had their deal about silencing voices and stuff, and all those people, all those senators or whoever they were, I was like, you have no idea how this works, do you? and I think that's so disappointing when it comes to somebody who's going to be making the decision, especially about like internet security and all that kind of stuff, because the privacy stuff's going to be a big deal. And I'm not saying like in a big scale where it's like, oh, we're gonna have overlords or something like that, but it's also like, because it doesn't really impact us daily, but in the long run it will. And I mean, I'm ready for Neuralink from what's his name, the Tesla guy, where they put stuff. Musk. Yeah, they put the thing in your brain, and you're all on the same.
Was that Elon or was that Bill Gates?
No, that's Elon. Elon has a thing called Neuralink. I think it's called, a company.
Okay.
He's starting small. He's trying to help people with like cystic fibrosis, cystic fibrosis, stuff like that. Stuff where the brain does stuff, and you put this thing in your brain, and it helps control it. And
that'd be good for.
But that's just the start. Before we know it, we'll have fake arms and all that kind of stuff, and then the arms will try to kill us. Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be good, but
you'd be like in Evil Dead when his home fist
that's what I'm saying.
Him up.
You just Operation Proto.
We turned to a society of Three Stooge sketches.
Yeah. I mean, and that stuff's kind of interesting to me, but also going forward with who we're electing as president, do they really have a concept of what's going on with a lot of this stuff? Because one thing I will say, no one gets in trouble ever at a certain, like, you hit that level above it, you're never getting in trouble. And that really bothers me. I feel like we haven't built infrastructure as a country to enforce laws that get these people, in trouble, and actually do it. Like, does that make sense to you guys? What I'm saying?
Repeat it. Use smaller words for me.
So for like people who actually break the law, they're not. I feel like they're not getting in trouble.
We've lost a lot of sense of cause and effect or punishment fitting the crime.
Yes.
There are some things that have gone down, I think, fueled by media and social media. If you just want to take, I think, the most glaring example, the 3+ years of Steele dossier, which was just ubiquitous. It was everywhere. And when you found out how it got to be where it was, it shunted aside. But then you have a laptop. Now, the first question I had about this whole laptop situation, did the FBI dust it for fingerprints? It's basic forensics, and it would prove ownership beyond a shadow of a doubt, one way or the other. I think everyone would want to know that. Not a single journalist has asked that question. Has it been dusted for fingerprints? Yeah, but it's all the big coy guessing game. Is it his? It's not his.
Well, I told you
And you have NBC reporters saying PBS saying we're not going to report on this because it's stupid, or we have NBC reporters saying we only report on what we can verify. So these same people who were pushing the Steele dossier, if nothing else, just the Steele dossier, which is proven absolute fakery. Forget where it came from and who paid for it. Just the fact that I'm talking about the document itself was all intents and purposes a forgery. But now all of a sudden, and Brian Stetler got so upset. Are you saying that we didn't have ethics over the last 3 years? No. And these newfound ethics with, we can't touch this Hunter Biden thing. And yes, I know Hunter Biden wasn't on the ballot, but the evidence indicates that he sold influence to his father, who was the sitting vice president. And there are questions to be asked, and they're not doing it. I want to know, just answer that one question. Was it dusted for fingerprints?
Well,
Whose fingerprints are on that laptop?
That's what's really interesting to me is how going forward the media will handle the next president. Like, because if Joe Biden wins, what do you think?
Fawning coverage returns.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. On the main networks?
I mean, the only thing I can think of is the way he presents himself on like a broadcast. Everyone's gonna be asking the questions.
No, they won't.
Because you can't ignore it.
What questions are they going to ask?
I can tell you. I can tell you what I think is going to happen.
Please.
I think nothing will happen in Washington if Joe Biden gets elected. Nothing will happen.
Yeah, because everyone hates each other.
People, they don't get along.
Yeah.
There's, again, a balance of power, right? Because the Democrats will retain the House. The Republicans will retain the Senate. and then you'll have a different White House. But nothing will happen. I think the news coverage will just flip-flop, right? So then you'll start seeing all the bad stuff on Fox News, and you'll start seeing all the good stuff on NBC or what. It'll just flip-flop. But nothing will change, in my opinion. I just don't think anything significant could happen. And if Trump gets reelected, then again, I don't think anything changes, right? I mean, it's unfortunate I have to say that, right? Because here I live in 2020 at a time when I know just based on my social media feed that people are anxious and they have anxiety and all these types of things, and I sit back and go, gosh, I remember when the presidential election was just not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, maybe my candidate will win or maybe they won't.
Or it was, but it wasn't this life or death. We're all going to die moving to
But we live in this society
Russia.
now where people feel it's important to like fly the flag of our president on their house, which I think is just ridiculous.
I found it hilarious because I was like, that makes me want to be a flag salesman every election.
Well, sure. I said it yesterday. I was actually over at the polls
I'm in the
yesterday.
wrong business.
And I was talking to a group of people, and I was like, I should have set up a Trump flag souvenir stand and sold them. I said I could have funded my campaign by selling Trump flags.
Well, that's what. Well, like
2022, Jay.
Well, that's what's amazing to me is like the capitalization of selling stuff. It's so funny to people who buy that stuff, buy it from Amazon. I'm like, you could probably buy that from his campaign, and it's considered like a donation.
Yeah.
But no one buys that stuff from him. I was like, I don't see how that message wasn't dictated to people. It's like, hey, if you really want, buy the Make America MAGA hat, but buy it from wherever his website is.
I mean, I just think it's silly that
Well, he created
that people drive around with the flag with the president's name on it. I mean, when did you ever see this before?
Well, I mean, he created it. That was the marketing genius behind his stuff.
I'm just saying. I personally think it's ridiculous. I mean, I can't even fathom it. I can't even fathom it.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like when 9/11 happened, and everyone felt like they needed to put flags on their cars.
Because again, we don't live in a country of red and blue states. We live in a country called the United States.
Yeah.
And to me, it just sows more division when you have this type of activity that goes on.
Well, I think that motivation will change after Donald Trump disappears. I don't think the next Republican or next person is going to have that kind of mentality of like, come to my rallies, let's have a party, get my flag, buy my hat.
Well, I mean,
I don't see.
And the reason I say it is because, yesterday I was at the polls in the evening in the Woodlands, and there was the Trump folks on one corner and their flags and stuff, and there was the Biden folks on the other.
You talking about the turning in? That was so great when I pulled there. It was like these two tents, and they were. We got the spirit. Yes, we
do.
do.
Last night you had tons of trucks going by with the Trump flags and all this stuff, and some guy decided to be real smart and take his Camaro or whatever he was and do a burnout down the street. Yeah, the sheriff's department pulled him over real quick.
Good. I'm sorry.
Right in the parking lot.
Hate idiots like that.
It was a total idiot. But at the end of the day, I mean, I just don't get it, right? And here's why. I don't get it because what has happened, like me as a Democrat, people say, oh, well, you don't support law enforcement. Well, that's ridiculous. Of course I support law enforcement. I was in the military for 15 years of my life. Why would you think I don't support
So you like boots on the ground?
I can't be, if you're a veteran, you have to be a Republican. You can't be a patriot unless you're a Republican if you're a veteran. And that's ridiculous.
That reminds me
absolutely
of an episode of West Wing where the Rahm Emanuel character, Josh, is wailing on this Republican about something, and he finally is telling the Republican, but you're gay. How can you be a Republican? And it was a great episode because the character was saying, because I believe in certain things.
Sure.
And my hope is that one day the Republicans just won't care that much.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of gay friends that are Republicans, and why are they? Because they're dual income and no kids. Most of the gay folks I know are significantly well off money wise. So it's not surprising to me, right? Because for whatever reasons, I mean, I personally don't understand how. I could not support a party that absolutely doesn't support who I am because I was born this way. It's not like I chose to be gay. I fought it for 27 years of my life until I finally accepted myself. But at the end of the day, that's part of the reason I can't do it, But I have friends that do, and that's their choice, right? And so they can have the choice they want to have. I don't care about that. They're not my friends because they're an R or a D. They're my friends because they have character and they treat people with respect. So that's how I choose my friends. And so I just don't get it, because to me it just sows more division in our country. When you have all these silly flags waving around that don't do anything, and it just creates more name calling and those types of things. So I'm looking forward to the day where those disappear.
Well, we had two instances of opponents actually doing videos together saying, listen, we don't agree, but you got to vote and this and that. And I was impressed with both of those. One was an actually slickly done, produced video. The other was kind of, hey, listen, we're both here at the polling place. Come on.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's the turning point.
Well, we got to close out today's show.
Man, we're just getting started. Keep the conversation going online, too.
Yeah, I will let listeners know if you're interested in about Montgomery's Wine and Music Festival that's going on this weekend. They're going to be having one of the reps on at noon o'clock today on Toast of the Town. And so if you're interested in that local event, stay tuned here on Lone Star Community Radio. Jay, it was good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
And Sean, it was all right.
Yeah,
It's
kind
better.
of a pity thing, you know.
Now I got to go catch a plane.
So
where are you off to?
Oklahoma.
Hey, you know why Oklahoma license plates say Oklahoma is okay? Because they don't know how to spell mediocre there. Thank you. I'll be playing all night, and I'll be sleeping on the sofa too tonight.
We will be having a show on Friday, and I guess keep a pulse.
Maybe we'll
on
have
what's going on.
some new, updates.
No, I think they're just gonna stop counting. They're like, it's just that.
They're just gonna give up.
I'm telling you, it's like really quick. First time I played cricket in England,
We gotta
when
go.
we
This is a
stopped
horrible
to
story.
take tea.
All right, you started with cricket. I'm like, who cares?
Well, no, we took a tea break. It's like we're doing this here. Oh, we're counting the balance. No, time for tea. We'll just pack it up. Anyhow, see you Wednesday.
See you guys. Today's show was recorded and broadcasted live on irlonestar.com, Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and all rights and ownership are reserved to Lone Star Community Radio. For more information regarding this program and Lone Star Community Radio, visit us online at irlonestar.com. Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's community radio station, serving the community with local programming on TV, radio, and online. If you enjoyed today's program, please support us by sponsorship or starting your own show. Contact us today by phone or text at 936-666-1084 or email the station at lscrstudios@gmail.com.
You are listening to Lone Star